this game was way better watching from a fan standpoint than the last one. The last one was, honestly, if I had to rate it, I'd say pathetic. This one was entertaining. So on this one of the guys that we haven't talked a lot about was I was really happy with Ferguson, the 4th-round pick, the tight end.
Yeah.
I know there was one play. It was like a short run play that he was blocking and kind of let his guy go and didn't do a great job there. But the 2-point conversion, the obviously catching the pass from Will Grier and breaking tackles and making a play there. How big of an impact do you think he can have in his rookie year?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking with Linda Wells, the Cowboys tight end coach, after the game, and that was the first guy he brought up. I kind of expected him to bring up either Peyton Hendershot or one of those other tight ends that was kind of in the mix, but he brought up Ferguson, and he and what he said was all around. Like, that was all he said. He was all around. And that's kind of been the tab on him coming out of Wisconsin as a rookie, is that he can block, he can move in the run game, and then he can get downfield a little bit even as a receiver. We didn't get a chance to really see it, and we didn't get a chance to see the physicality through practices, but he showed all of that on Saturday night. And I think that was a huge point of emphasis on this tight end group, is to get Peyton Hendershot involved and get them down the field. We thought Hendershot, at least through camp, looked like the better receiving tight end. Ferguson put that to the test on Saturday with the big reception up the middle. He was able to bound off of a couple guys and then rumble his way for a first down. Really nice play on his standpoint, and it backs up what we saw with the tight end group against Denver. Because you talked about it, it was a pathetic game against Denver in week 1 from an offensive standpoint. But if you had to pick one unit on the offense that actually played decently well, it probably would have been the tight ends. And so it was a continuation from what we had seen through camp, through preseason week number 1, and then they were able to kind of put it all together with Jake Ferguson. As far as his role in the offense, I think he can have a bigger role than what we've seen from guys like Dalton Schultz when he was a 4th-round pick in the past. I mean, it took him 2-3 years to finally actually make a big-time impact, and he wasn't really asked to do so. Neither will Jake Ferguson. He doesn't have to come in and make a big impact, but as a blocker, he needs to be solid. As somebody who can be a receiving option, he needs to be at least serviceable, because you'll have Dalton Schultz to do both of those things, but you want a secondary tight end, especially if they're going to run a lot of 21 personnel, a lot of 12 personnel to work into the mix there as well.
Man, I also think Ferguson drew what I consider line of the night. I don't know if you guys were having a competition to have the most entertaining lines, but Stanbeck said, I think it was something along the lines of, "Get out of here, I lift weights for a living," as Ferguson ran over that guy. So that was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable for me as an audience guy.
Man, mine was when it was Josiah Bronson on the interior in the second half, and he threw somebody out the club, is what Isaiah said. That was, and then the best part of that was that Bill followed it up and was like, "Yeah, back in my club going days, I would have hired him." And that was my favorite exchange of the whole night. I had to keep it together for a little bit because I love both of those guys, Bill and Isaiah. We do a ton of shows together, but to see the interaction between those guys back and forth, oh man, that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a very fun broadcast. I think that added to what Mike was talking about, was the what you saw on the field was pretty enjoyable too, because there were some exciting moments. Yeah. Obviously,
not as much yellow flags.
Right, that makes a huge difference. The KaVontae Turpin moment, kind of what was, you were seeing that happen. You were seeing it all unfold right in front of you. Kind of describe what that was like for this team and how big that is for him.
Oh, I think it's massive for him, specifically because even though he had the advantage, I think, in terms of making the 53-man roster, I mean, they put some investment into him as an undrafted guy, a guy they signed off of the street, because they know what kind of weapon he could turn into at some point in the NFL. Did they know that it was going to happen in week 2 of the preseason and it was going to happen in as big of a way as it did? I doubt it. I don't think anybody expected him to do what he did on Saturday night. But the first one cemented, in our eyes, it cemented his spot on the roster. It was, okay, we knew he was a return ace. We didn't know he was going to be special, and he showed that with his first return. Then he goes out and he has the punt return for 86 yards in the second quarter. Then it was like, all right, get the pads off, you're done. Your preseason's over. Let's get you ready for the regular season. And now it's getting into the question because of how good he was on Saturday. Are NFL teams even going to kick his direction? Are they even going to put it that way? Now, on a punt, they have no choice. They're going to do what they can to try either put him to the sideline or back him into the end zone if they're on a certain part of the field. They're going to try and maybe kick it away from him. On kickoff, you can just send it into the end zone and you can have the touchback, especially with these kickers that will make NFL rosters. But how many opportunities in the regular season is he going to have to really turn on the speed and to make some impact? Because he's got a spot. I mean, 53-man roster, he's going to be active. I'm excited to see what he can tell or what he can do from there. And man, if he can continue to be a weapon for that offense as well as what he did on special teams, he could maybe have one of these great come-from-behind stories that you love to hear about.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You talk about the offense part. That jet sweep was the moment where I was like, oh, man, that's tackle for loss. And he turned it into a positive play. But we've seen that with this team a lot of times. We're like, oh, why do we even really run that play? You got the guy that it's designed for, and that's the good positive thing there.
And I think that's one thing that's important to point out, too, because you're not going to make a roster, at least in most cases. This might be a special case. But in most cases, you're not going to make an NFL roster just as a special teams return man. You're going to have to play offense. You're going to have to be a wide receiver because you only get 6 spots, 7 if you wanted to go heavy, to keep on the roster. And only 5 of those normally, maybe 6, are active on game days. So you have to play offense. The one thing that stood out to me in camp, even before all of this happened and the notoriety around KaVontae Turpin really started to take shape, was there was one play where he was out against the first-team defense in camp. This was probably a week ago. I can't remember exactly which practice, prior to going to Denver. I know that, so I guess it was a little more than a week ago.
Gotcha, yeah.
But at some point in camp, he was lining up on offense, and they put him in the slot initially, and then they moved him outside. And when they moved him outside, he was going up against Trayvon Diggs. And Diggs audibly was saying, oh, no. And he started backing up. He went back 10 yards, not 10 yards, probably 5 yards, just to give himself some space because he knows the type of next-level speed that KaVontae Turpin can bring to the table.
Interesting.
So it's even different for guys on defense when they're seeing him. And if he's able to make that kind of impact, and you saw what he could do in terms of catching the edge on the wide receiver sweeps, he does provide an element to this offense that I don't think they've had in years past.
So how about Trysten Hill? We've had discussions about him today. Was that a game where, hey, you've made the team too, or he still has to have a good game on Friday to make the team?
I think it helped him out quite a bit. And he's had a good camp. It's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, I think, of some of the question marks and then some of the other risers in terms of Oxnard. But he's had a good camp. And if you ask any of the guys along the defensive line, they're really impressed with his work ethic this year. They're impressed with his hands and his ability to move guys at the line of scrimmage, which I don't think we've really seen in the past out of Trysten Hill. And then you saw it this weekend. He was able to force the fumble. I think it was telling that in the second half he wasn't available, and he took his shoulder pads off just like KaVontae Turpin did. So if that's an indication, he's on the roster. But I still don't know if that's a for sure sign. I don't know what to really make of that moving forward. I think you can take it with a grain of salt and say, all right, he's at least the favorite to be on the roster in a tough decision coming forward with that defensive line and so many bodies there that you would really like to stick around. But I think he's on the roster at the moment. I still think he needs to have a solid game. He can't just get run over on Friday against Seattle, or else maybe that conversation starts picking up again. But just based off of what he did with the way that he played on a consistent basis and then forcing the fumble, I think he's on this roster moving forward.
So the other one we've been talking about a little bit is Tolbert. And I'm going to give you my opinion. I don't know if he's really ready to play in the NFL in week 1. Not saying that he's not going to be an NFL player and have a good 10-year career, but I think it might be a lot to ask of him from what I've seen for him to line up correctly, run the correct routes, know what's going on, make some decent reads that receivers have to make based off of what the defense is lined up as. Who do you see playing the majority of snaps Sunday night against Tampa Bay opposite of CeeDee Lamb?
No, I think that's fair. I really do. And I like Jalen Tolbert as a prospect. But when you drafted him in the third round, that was kind of the thought process. Is this isn't the Sun Belt anymore. This isn't South Alabama. You're going up against guys that would have been twice as good as the guys that you faced while you were putting up 1,500 yards in your senior season in Mobile. I mean, there's a reason why he's having a bit of a conversion into the NFL and a slow start. He looked like a rookie. That's the fact of the matter. And he didn't get the foot down. Sure, sometimes you can give that away. You just got to have better awareness in the NFL when you got to have 2 feet down. That should have been a catch, should have been a touchdown. And then if he makes that play and he brings that foot in, I don't know if we're really talking about it the same way. You put it into context. He's had a solid camp. He hasn't stuck out, but he hasn't been terrible. And then when he gets in the preseason game, at least the first 2 weeks, it does look like he's taken some time to adjust. And I think you're right, Mike. I think if he's on the roster, and he'll be on the roster as a third-round pick, I don't know if he's that number 2 guy yet. And I think that spot's been taken by Noah Brown. That's the reason why he hasn't played in the last couple of weeks. I think he's probably going to see the majority of the reps opposite of CeeDee Lamb. I think it'll be 88 on one side, 85 on the other side. You'll see plenty of Jalen Tolbert in that ball game against Tampa Bay in Week 1. But if you're asking me who's going to be that number 2 guy, he had a shot to win it, and he didn't. Is ultimately what happened in camp. He did his job. He's a rookie. He's learning the playbook. He's getting adjusted. But to this point, he hasn't looked like a number 2 wide receiver, and I don't think he'll be looking like that going into that Week 1. But this week will be a good tell as well.